expert for debugging the Windows crash dump, starting to debug and understand where our problems are, raising the defects, starting to do more of that quality mindset piece. I realized that putting people first to enable them to do the job was the right thing. And that's where my journey started, becoming a leader in the testing space. But what's become more apparent over the last few years is, as much as I love the quality side of things, it's the leadership side that I really am passionate about as much. And it's bringing those two elements together to try and help continue this motion of quality engineering being an important part of the delivery cycle, that testing is an active and important part to include, whether it's a separate role or whether it's part of the delivery. Is testing is important. What that means is people will have to look at their skill sets. It's not all about automation. There are many ways to still be effective as a testing professional without being an expert in automation. Think outside the box, think about how you can make an impact and still focus on the quality of the system that you're developing or working on. It isn't just about those automations. I've never been one to go, hey, look, we're all fully automated, because we're not fully automated. We have all automation to help our testing. It's very much that model of automation in testing rather than replacing the testing with automation. But there's been a change of narrative that we need to start talking about how we're saving cost by more automation being put in place. So we've had to change our mindset around automation to focus on, great, we're doing this automation, but how can we shout about it? What's the big benefit we're getting from this? How are we ensuring the quality staying the same, but we're actually delivering on automation? And it's making sure we're not just automating the thousands of regression tests. We're selective with what we're automating. It could be test data generation. It could be environment deployment. It could be setting up a database. It could be, I would caveat that with, it's fine for it to do the first pass for you, but have a human that actually verifies it. Have a human that thinks about the edge cases around the outside of what the AI has produced. Yes, you can then feed that into the model and hopefully the model will improve next time. But it can't just be we're going to replace the team of humans with this AI and automation, because it's not going to happen. And you'll end up with more quality issues than you have. We're not automating everything. We're going to automate what we believe is the right thing to automate, where it's cost effective. And we'll look at where AI adds the innovation. We're not just going to blanket take in all the AI and automation and just do everything that way, because that's not what I fundamentally believe will end up with a high quality system. The key term is neurodivergence, which is when there's something that is different with someone's brain, as far as there's enough difference to mean they've got a condition such as autism, ADHD, dyslexia, dyspraxia, Tourette's, and there's many others as well. And what's key is those people with neurodivergence need to be given the same allowances as everybody else.
Yes.
And ensuring that the workplace or schools or home life entitles everyone to get the same accessibility to everything. My biggest challenges have been trying to sell the narrative around why we want to do things and the way we want to do them. And I know I speak for many in big organizations where people see testing as an activity that only happens towards the end of a cycle.
Hello. How's everyone doing? Namaste and welcome to the Test Chat YouTube channel. You're watching TesterSpeak and I am your host, Brijesh Dev. Today I have a very special guest with whom I've been trying to catch up for a while. And it is unbelievable that, I have known him for such a long time. We have interacted on LinkedIn. We have interacted on different social media forums. But this is going to be my first ever conversation with him. So without any further delay, let's welcome today's guest, Simon Pryor.
Hello.
Welcome to the show, Simon.
Great to finally talk to you, Brijesh. It's been a long time. I think we've been trying this for years, right?
Absolutely. We've had so many chats, we've had so many comments and questions on comments and remarks and feedback and all of that going on, but this is the first time that we are talking. Now, for the audience, let me tell you that Simon is an award-winning leader in the quality engineering space. And that means a lot because he actually exemplifies how you can have a brilliant career in quality engineering I know that a lot of you have had this question asking me, do I have a future in quality engineering or testing? So Simon is right here in front of me, and he's also an exponent of neurodiversity, which is a very important topic in today's day and age, with so much going on in our lives. So we will talk about that. He is an amazing leader in the testing and quality engineering space. So we will touch upon certain leadership aspects as well, and we will talk about other stuff, including football. How about that, Simon?
Sounds good.
Okay, so to start with, Simon, could you just briefly introduce yourself and talk us through the journey that you've had so far?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I'm Simon Pryor. I am currently the head of quality engineering at EasyJet, which is a low-cost airline in Europe. My role spans all of IT, so everything from our website, our mobile apps, our CRM systems, our back-end databases, our operational systems that ensure the planes get in the sky and they're crewed correctly, and everything in between. I've got testing teams, QE teams across all of that. Apart from that, I'm also a co-host of the Testing Peers podcast, which has been going since 2020. We started it during the pandemic, and I've recently started my own mentoring side project as well under the name Lead Test Include. So I've been mentoring various aspiring leaders and people new to testing to try and get them jobs and to help them move forward in their careers. And as Brajesh said, neurodiversity is a big thing for me as well. So I've recently been made co-chair of the Disability Network at EasyJet for our employees, and I'm using that platform to try and help make the workplace more inclusive, everything from neurodiversity to physical disabilities as well. So yeah, there's a lot going on. Part outside of work, I have a wife and two young boys and 2 dogs. And yeah, my life is full, but there's always time for conversations like this.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Yeah, I somehow missed it in the introduction. The Testing Peers podcast. If you guys haven't caught up with that, please do catch that. And I'm giving a shout out to you and to all the wonderful other co-hosts that you have. You guys have been doing such an amazing job for such a long time. What I really appreciate is the consistency, number one, and the choice of topics that you guys pick. I mean, it has always blown my mind. So how you guys pick on those topics and the diverse perspectives that the 4 of you have, plus your guests. You've included some wonderful people over the past episodes, and then it's really nice to hear. So if you guys haven't caught up with the podcast yet, do that. I will put a link in the description to the podcast where you can catch the podcast. And also, I will put a link to the bios of all the hosts of the podcast so that you can catch them on social media with their social media handles. At least I'm connected to all of them on LinkedIn. So it's very easy for me to do that. And Simon, I want to begin by asking you about the journey in testing. Now,
Yeah.
as I said earlier, and we were talking about it before the recording as well, that there is a notion in the industry that ever since Agile and DevOps have come, testers' careers have been cut short. Do you agree?
I don't, not at all. I think there might be more. It's about being creative with what your role includes, I think. And what I've always learned from my journey is testers are often the glue in teams. They have the end-to-end knowledge, whereas sometimes this is not being. I don't want to sort of stereotype here, but generally developers tend to be more deep involved in more narrow domains, and testers tend to look across the whole domain and be able to pull things together. They know the end-to-end scope. They're able to look at requirements and work out that end-to-end piece and really understand the dynamics of the system. They can have the relationships with key stakeholders and move forward. And from my career, I started as a developer. I actually came out of university insistent that I did not want to go into being a developer, that I wanted to find other things to do. And the job market for graduates at that point was very, very, very focused on going into software engineering, going into development. The one language I hated more than anything was C++. And I ended up being a graduate C++ developer for a large cybersecurity company. And I was, by 15 years, the youngest developer in the team. So I never got the meaty code to look at. I was always the minor bug fixes, the buffer overflows that needed fixing, the integer values that needed changing to int64 or whatever else it was. There was never any meaty work. So I started exploring how else could I sort of provide value to the team. I started looking at Windows debug crash dumps, and I was our team expert for debugging the Windows crash dumps, and then working out where in our code the problem was and putting that forward. And that took me on the journey of starting to debug and understand where our problems are, raising the defects, starting to do more of that quality mindset piece. We were doing Scrum, and it's the only time in my career that actually I've been part of a very effective Scrum team for that first 5-6 years of my journey. I started learning to be Scrum Master. I started doing more of the facilitation and communicating with people. And then I started taking on some of the what was then called the QA tasks, which was writing the tests, developing the Perl script that then was automated straight away. And again, very early in my career, we had a really good Perl automation system called the TMS, the test management system. There was thousands of tests on there, using all the virus definitions and writing the right code to test against different file types and all this kind of stuff. There was thousands of files, thousands of tests on different OSs and everything else. And I wrote my Perl scripts. As soon as we decided the tests, we then wrote the automation as part of that, put it into the automation, and the delivery wasn't complete until that test was live and passing on a day-to-day basis. That was my first experience of testing and my first experience of test automation, and I loved it. I wanted to be into that straight away. So I ended up engineering my move across from development into QA, working on some of our threat prevention software at the point. Very quickly, I started moving up and became a lead, and so I became a tester in 2010. And I was a lead a couple of years later, and it was at that point that I started discovering the testing community. So before that, I thought the way we did testing internally was the only way everyone did testing. It wasn't until I got the chance to go to a local conference and then go to a test bash in Brighton in 2015 that I started to realize that actually the world is bigger than the way we do testing. And there's a lot of places that don't have it as good. There's other places that have it far better than we do. And I was able to sort of start looking at that and working out. From that, I set up my own meetup. It started off as the Aylesbury Tester Gathering and became MOT Bucks, which is the part of England, just north of London that I live in. And I was able to start getting people together. We only had 20, 25 people most events, but it was good to get conversation going. We had some really good speakers come down and present to everyone. And it got that community feel, and we started to look at how we could improve testing. I continued to grow my role, kept getting a lot of comments that I was a lot more of a people person than a lot of the other testers and developers in the team, and maybe I should think about management and all this kind of stuff. And then literally overnight, I went from being a technical lead to being phoned at 5 o'clock on a Thursday evening, I think it was, saying, we're going to make you the manager. You're going to start being the manager tomorrow. We're going to announce it first thing in the morning. I'm like, okay, what's my team? So team-wise, I've had a local team, but you're also going to set up a new team in Ireland. So you're not just the team locally, but you're going to have a team in Ireland as well. You're going to have to set that up from scratch. We want to start looking at graduates. We want to look at an experienced lead, and you're going to be hiring that whole team. So I was like, great. So a context I've never known about, we have to hire. And I had a team that was quite old school locally as well, that I went from being a peer to being the manager. So literally overnight, no training, no nothing. You are a manager. Suddenly, your days are not filled with technical discussions about how you're going to test something. It's more about, can you approve someone's leave or someone's kid's sick? Can they go home early? And this kind of stuff. So that was quite a transition. But actually, as a manager, I realized that putting people first to enable them to do the job was the right thing. And that's where my journey started, becoming a leader in the testing space. I then moved companies and became a program test manager. for a year, and then I joined EasyJet as a test manager a year later, and just as the pandemic hit. So I went from having this option of building the center of excellence to now we're closing down the central QA function. You're going to be a test manager in the digital space, and I ended up taking on the digital testing. All the while, I've gone back from being very agile at the cybersecurity company to being very waterfall with third-party SaaS vendors and no in-house development, and working out how you test in that different context. There was a real challenge in changing that mindset. And then as I've grown in the role, I sort of spread the awareness of testing, got more people on board with the importance of testing, moved to a quality engineering mindset where we talk about the whole holistic quality and being involved from the start all the way through to the end. And that was where I started to build the QE chapter. The QE wasn't a chapter we called it at the time. We called it the QE Guild, Test Guild. And we started inviting people internally to come along and talk about testing and learn about testing. And then eventually I was able to take on the role of head of quality assurance, quickly changed that to head of quality engineering. And we're in the place we're in now, where I've got the team in place across the organization. So it's been a journey, and all in the background, I've kept my hand into the community side as well, as you know, Brajesh, and we've talked several times in the past. But what's become more apparent over the last few years is, as much as I love the quality side of things, it's the leadership side that I really am passionate about as much. And it's bringing those two elements together to try and help continue this motion of quality engineering being an important part of the delivery cycle, that testing is an active and important part to include, whether it's a separate role or whether it's part of the delivery. Is testing is important. What that means is people will have to look at their skill sets. It's not all about automation. There are many ways to still be effective as a testing professional without being an expert in automation. Knowing about automation and understanding where automation makes sense is important, but not every single person has to be an absolute expert in automation. And that's the big message for me, is think outside the box, think about how you can make an impact and still focus on the quality of the system that you're developing or working on. It isn't just about those automated tests. And that's the agenda that still baffles me on the social medias. It seems to be all about remove manual testing. It's all about automation. No, there's room for both, and we need to work out how we blend it all into the testing term. It's all part of testing. How we test it is an individual context basis. We need to focus on the testing as a whole.
Well, I think that is a brilliant journey and a great summary, because there are, I will list some of the takeaways that I got from that message of yours. Number one is stay patient. Okay, you have to have patience, because there will be aspects that you have not experienced yet, but there are a lot of other opportunities. Secondly, what I got from that was that, as and when the opportunities came along, you were there to take up that challenge and say, okay, let's face it head on and see what it brings, and it has only benefited you and the organization. Also, working with people, I think that is one key aspect. We often get so digressed, if I may use that word, because we are always told, well, you know what, you need to be technically sound and you need to learn automation. Now there is AI, so you've got to master AI and stuff like that, that we get soaked into that and we get completely digressed from the fact that we are working with people. At the end of the day, whatever we build, we are building it for people. So at both ends of the application, there are people. So if you forget that, then you lose track of that completely. And what your journey tells me is that you were always aware of that fact, and you used it to your advantage rather than getting soaked into something else and forgetting completely about it. I love the fact where you mentioned about the transition into that leadership role, and how you put things in perspective and put the right balance between people and technology, and said, okay, if you have to make progress, you have to look at both aspects and not just one. So a brilliant journey, a great summary. Now that brings me to this question, and this may sound very repetitive because I ask almost all my guests this question, that there is this what should I say? There's this bandwagon of people trying to get into automation all the time, and now there's this AI bandwagon as well. I wrote a short post about it, I think yesterday or day before, that everything these days is AI powered. Even my toothbrush says it is AI powered. I don't need an AI powered toothbrush. For God's sake, I so okay,
Yeah, absolutely.
washing machine is AI powered. I don't
Yeah,
need an AI powered washing machine. Okay, whatever automatic or semi-automatic or whatever you want to call it, it is good for me. It works for my family. You know, so I don't need AI powered everywhere. Similarly, automation. I mean, how do you handle that? I know you spoke about not everything has to be automated and things.
yeah.
How do
I
you, how
think
do you deal with this constant barrage of getting into automation and AI and all of that?
yeah, it is a constant challenge, and the way to deal with it is there is an element of embracing it. The cynic in me is that AI is all just code written by a human at some point in the past, and it needs to have some level of human understanding. And I did a lot of work in the last couple of years of helping build up our data science testing team, and Lavina, who's also very well known in the industry, she leads that team up, and she's done a great job of building a team that understands how to test data science models and how to integrate it into our wider systems. And that's the start of where the AI stuff has come in. There's a lot of pressure. Senior leaders get this pressure that they want AI in the business. They want to be able to talk about AI as part of our DNA. They want automation. They want faster deliveries. That becomes a pressure from above that we must be doing more. And that's been a challenge I've had for the last year or so, that we're not doing enough automation. Well, we were doing the automation, but we weren't shouting about it. And it was just part of our testing process. I've never been one to go, hey, look, we're all fully automated, because we're not fully automated. We have automation to help our testing. It's very much that model of automation in testing rather than replacing the testing with automation. But there's been a change of narrative that we need to start talking about how we're saving cost by more automation being put in place. So we've had to change our mindset around automation to focus on, great, we're doing this automation, but how can we shout about it? What's the big benefit we're getting from this? How are we ensuring the quality staying the same, but we're actually delivering on automation? And it's making sure we're not just automating the thousands of regression tests. We're selective with what we're automating. It could be test data generation. It could be environment deployment. It could be setting up a database. It could be a whole load of other things. It isn't just about, well, I've got 1,000 tests, I'm going to automate all the regression tests and we're going to run them every cycle. There may be 600 tests there that are not valid anymore because you've changed the system, but you've run it because it's part of the regression pack. It's about looking at smart testing and using automation to make that process faster. And then with AI, it's finding the right opportunity to bring AI into the equation. That may be looking at test case generation based on requirements or user stories. But I would caveat that with, it's fine for it to do the first pass for you, but have a human that actually verifies it. Have a human that thinks about the edge cases around the outside of what the AI has produced. Yes, you can then feed that into the model and hopefully the model will improve next time. But it can't just be we're going to replace the team of humans with this AI and automation, because it's not going to happen, and you'll end up with more quality issues than you have today. So it's about getting that balance right, about educating the team. And I had a comment recently that I take things on the chin and just move on when it comes to challenges. And it's the way to work with it, because you get pushed back. No, you're not automating enough. Well, okay, we'll do what we can, but I'm going to make my stand and say, we're not automating everything. We're going to automate what we believe is the right thing to automate, where it's cost effective, and we'll look at where AI adds the innovation. We're not just going to blanket take in all the AI and automation and just do everything that way, because that's not what I fundamentally believe will end up with a high quality system. So for me, it's embrace it, learn about it, have enough understanding to be dangerous, but you don't have to be experts in every technology and every AI model that's coming out. It's about understanding where your balance is. And it's also about, it's okay to be cynical. The amount of vendors out there that will come at you. I mean, I must get 20 emails a day in my work inbox of these vendors that claim they've got this AI-powered testing tool that's going to solve all of EasyJet's problems or solve all of my team's problems. And you don't know the context. You don't know what we're on about. You don't know how we work. Don't make those claims. We're going to be cynical. We're going to push back because that's not going to get you any purchase from us. The best way to do is understand things and look at where AI fits yourselves. Don't be led by the vendors. Seek out yourselves first where you think AI could add value. And we've done a couple of workshops recently where we've got the team together. We've had the continuous testing model up on the screen, and we've worked through every aspect of that continuous testing model. Okay, this is the testing we're doing there. Do we see any value in automation or AI at this point? Do we see it at this point? Built a backlog. And then with one of our partners that we're working with as our testing partners, we've worked together to identify how they can go away and develop some of these solutions for us so that we can start to build it into our context. So it's about keeping it in perspective that you have to look at the way you're doing things and what's going to enhance the way you and your team are working, rather than just blanket going, oh, that AI solution over there, I want that, I'm going to pull that in, and just getting that balance right.
Yeah, I mean, that's a beautiful response. For me, this love for this AI powered or that 100% automation thing, I find it so bizarre. I've spoken to a lot of people. I speak to leaders from different companies, and they are somehow fascinated or mesmerized by this concept of automation. And they say, oh, you know what? 100% automation will give me huge cost savings. Like, first of all, 100% automation does not exist. So I have to bring in my card and say, okay, I am the guy who talks about nothing called manual testing. So I have to start talking about nothing called 100% automation next. Okay, because you rightly said, it's important to understand what you can automate. And it is not just about automating a bunch of regression test cases. It could be test data generation. It could be, making or setting up your test environments. It could be, test reports generation. It could simply be test analysis as well. I mean,
yeah,
it's not just about pass fail, right? Your
exactly
test will give you a lot of other information. And as we know that, as testers, we are always looking for more information. And, automation can help you gather that information in a quick way, which, somebody else, if a human is sitting, may take a lot of time. So for that analysis, you could use automation, and now you could use AI as well for doing that bit. So just simply by saying, 100% automation, and then starting to convert a bunch of written test cases into automation scripts and claiming that, oh, you know what, we have achieved 100% automation. I think that's absurd. So thank you for saying that loud and clear, and I'm sure a lot of other people will resonate with that. Now that brings me to my next question. So when you talk to people in your team, your team also has people with diverse skill sets, and so there must be, a group of people or somebody who says, you know what, I think we can automate this. And so how do you handle the diversity of opinions within your team?
So my mindset's always been, if you believe something, try it, and let's see. And if it fails, well, we've tried. What have we learned? But it's valuing everyone's opinion. Everyone has an equal voice. Some will say, oh, there's no value in automating that. But if someone actually says, well, actually, it's only going to take me 10 minutes or half an hour to develop something that will help with that, great. Spend half an hour doing it. Spend a day doing it. Go away, put it together, bring it back to us and show us. I'm open for innovation, collaboration, working together, identifying things that can be improved. But equally, if people are of the opinion, you know what, this is really not going to, there's no value in this right here. Well, let's do, there's other ways we can improve the quality here. Let's be more collaborative. Let's work directly with the stakeholders. Let's work together on the testability of the user stories or the testability of the design. Actually, there's more value in that than there is actually in automating something at the end or automating something that's going to be run at the end. Let's get the design right. Let's do it that way. Fine, let's go and do that, and let's prove that works as well. And then we can look at the success stories. It's not just about the automating to make things faster. It might be the more collaborative approach has led to faster testing time and less defects in production. Great, let's put it all together. And I like the fact that I've got a team of people that think about different things. And we've got different areas as well. We've got areas of the business that are very agile, like the web and mobile app and the back end systems that are all in-house developed. And then we've got a lot of systems that are completely third-party vendor integrations into our estate as SaaS solutions, where the testing tends to be UAT testing. So we have to look at how we can approach each problem differently. So we've got two effective strategies. We've got an in-house strategy and we've got a SaaS solution strategy. It's looking at things and saying, what's the problem in this area that we need to try and solve? And working out the solution to solve it. And different people will have different ideas. That might be one of my test architects. It might be one of the test managers. It might be the test environments manager. They might have different ideas on how we can solve particular problems, but collectively together, we workshop things out a lot where we get the Post-it notes out, or we get a whiteboard out, or if we're virtual, we're using a Miro board or something just to work through the problem, work out what the impact is, and then brainstorm solutions. And some will be automation, some will be let's try an AI thing that might be able to help. Others will be just let's collaborate, let's identify the test together with the stakeholders. Let's work in a room with them and say, how are we going to test this, and work it through that way. So it's really just being open to that diversity of thought and allowing all solutions to come forward.
I think that is an excellent example of a collaborative leadership style. I know you've written about it. You've mentioned it in a couple of discussions that it's important for leaders to understand what each team member brings to the table and then utilize it in a collaborative manner so that it can work to the advantage of the entire team. And this is a great example of that. So that leads me to my next question. You mentioned about how you got the opportunity to lead, and then you've now risen to the head of quality engineering within EasyJet. What steps do I need to take if I'm starting my journey as a test engineer? What steps do I need to take to get into that leadership role? Is there a specified roadmap, or is there some mantra that you share, some tip, or?
I think there isn't necessarily there's not one recipe that works for everybody. It depends on your context. It depends on your own personality. But the things that I would say need to be clear is you need to work on those people skills. You need to be able to support people, coaching, mentoring, working with people directly, being empathetic to their needs and working with them as people. But there's also the ability to make decisions and work with stakeholders, people outside your team, managing upwards, managing outwards, not just managing downwards, so to speak. Think about your ecosystem, think about your level of impact. Think about the key people that you need to be able to impact and your allies that can help share your voice. It's about building that network as much as it's about building your confidence in your soft skills. So alongside, like I say, decision making, people management skills, your confidence, your public speaking, not necessarily meaning you're going and presenting lots of conferences, but having the ability to stand up in a meeting and stand behind your information you're presenting and doing it in a way that's convincing. So there's a difference between standing up in a meeting and presenting a few slides and reading off the slides and really bringing people on that journey. when you're going through it. And that's what's key as a leader. You need to be able to take people on those journeys. You need to be able to really stand up and stand behind what you're presenting and believe in it and really feel it as you're presenting it and make people in the room feel it as well. So there's a lot. It's not just about, oh, I've got the title of manager, therefore I'm on the path up now, because one of the biggest mistakes I think people make when they move into management is they either don't trust their team and they think they can just dictate and tell the team exactly how to do things in the way they would do it, which very quickly you lose the respect of your team and you lose the team start to realize, well, he doesn't need me, he's got it all handled himself. I'm not a mini him. I need to be able to do my own thing. I'm smart too. I can do things in my own way. So the mistakes tend to be you become too controlling and you dictate the way things work. You don't think about the bigger picture. So again, strategic thinking is really key. It's not just about what your team do day to day. It's what the impact you as a team are having on the wider organization or the wider function that you're part of. It's how you build that image up, and as the face of that function, as the face of your team, it's important that you're able to step up and represent at all points. With the leadership thing, it is about putting a mantra together and having a belief in how you do management. And for me, there was four key things that are my values, and it's protect the team, it's empower the team, it's evangelize the team, and it's nurture the team. If I get those four right, I know my team are okay. So protecting them, it's making sure that nothing, you're protecting them from any outside interference. When thing comes down from above, it's making sure that the team don't get impacted by it as much as you are, and you're shielding them from the bigger impact. Evangelizing, it's shouting about all successes, celebrating with the team, making sure people outside of your team are aware of the good stuff that your team are doing. It's nurturing, giving the team the time, being the shoulder, putting an arm around their shoulders and encouraging them and building them up and coaching them and giving them the training they need to grow, giving them opportunities to step up and be something. And then the final one is empowering them, is actually, I don't have to be the voice all the time. I've got smart people in my team. I'll let them go forward and I'll sit in the background and support them, and allowing them to be the ones that step up. If you can do those things, then you're being a successful leader, and that gives you the opportunities to grow, because people start to notice that, and then you move into the bigger remits. And the biggest difference I've seen moving up different levels, other than you have to get involved in budgets and whatever else, is the amount of time spent on strategic thinking. So you go from being in the day-to-day where you're managing a very small team looking at tactical stuff, to the fact as you grow in a role and get into a bigger position, it's all about the strategy. It's all about what the long-term view is how are we going to impact this over the next 6 months? What automation initiatives are we going to look at that's going to move the dial over the next 6 months? It's not just about, I'm going to automate on that one project. It's, if we automate over here and we automate over here, what can we do over here to make it consistent? What can we do over here to build up that coverage? What can we do in this place to improve the quality? How do we assess the full landscape of our systems and make sure we're consistent across all approaches? It's looking at the bigger things that are going to make a difference. And it's the ability to think like that enables you to grow as a leader.
Well, I think those are some very interesting tips for people, especially the mantra that you shared, the 4 big tips. I think I have seen that with some of the leaders that I've worked with, that they adopt variations of the 4 tips that you mentioned, but it is more or less the same guideline that all of them choose. And what I've also seen is that they complement it with a style where, in success, they let the team take the credit, and when there is a failure, they go ahead and take the blame themselves. And I've seen that happen, and you just put it in such a nice manner that even it's easy for people to understand and adopt that style. So thank you so much for that one. So that brings me to another question, which is not exactly leadership, but more about, okay, we could put it in the leadership bracket. Now, when you are talking to your team, you're also talking to the other stakeholders. You spoke about managing, upwards and outwards. Uh, so, so how do I get that right balance? That I am supporting my team, but I'm also making sure that the stakeholders understand what the team is doing, and also any message that is coming from the stakeholders, I am relaying it to the team, not sounding biased towards a management decision that's coming up. And I say this, I'm asking this question because in testing, a lot of times situations arise when the management suddenly decides to scrap something and say, okay, testing time has been cut short or whatever. And then somehow, uh, as a leader, you will have to spend time convincing your team that it is a decision which is going to help the product in the long run or whatever. But then the team may be upset about it. So so what do you do to balance both sides?
It's a difficult one. I think you need to look at your messaging and the language you use, the way you position the message needs to be different depending on who you're speaking to. And even with your own team, it's understanding how individuals will react best to a message and then being able to give them the message in the right tone. Some may just need to hear it bluntly. This is happening. By the way, we're going to be doing this. This is going to happen. And this is the outcome. Others will need you to put a lot more fluff around it and make sure it's put in a nice, fluffy wording that it's all going to be fine and we're all doing this together and we're all in this journey together, but there's going to be some changes and it's going to do this and that. And it's understanding how you word that. And then when you look at stakeholders as well, you need to speak in their language. So let's say if it's a finance person that's a stakeholder, you need to speak about the pounds and dollars and the impact it's going to have on that. If you're speaking to someone who's in marketing or in customer or something like that, you need to talk about how it's going to impact those customers or how it's going to impact our ability to run campaigns in marketing. It's about focusing on your audience and ensuring that you are able to change that message up for the audience you're talking to. That's a challenge, especially if you've got 5 different audiences that you need to share the same message to. You don't necessarily want to have to relay the message in 5 different ways, but there may be a way that you can, group some of them together and cover multiple things at once. I always, when I put a message together, a presentation together, I tend to create 2 versions, one for my team and one for externals. And that way I can look at the messaging that I'm giving to my team and adapt it to ensure that the message I'm giving outwards is more targeted at what they care about. Because at the end of the day, most stakeholders don't care about the testing we do; they care about the outcome. Yes. And the outcome is the system is working, the system is deliverable. We're going to release a high quality system, and this is going to improve revenue by X%, or we're going to get more customers buying tickets, or they're going to buy more stuff on the plane, or it's how we get those systems out and what the impact is from a testing perspective that we need to focus on. But within the team, it's about how we're going to identify those tests, how we're going to work on this solution, how we're going to deliver it, the automation that we might consider, the cost that we might spend on tooling. All of that builds up into the same equation, but the stakeholders don't need to hear all that. They just need to hear the outcome. And that's how we differentiate.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, I have seen that, a lot of times messages getting lost in translation, messages not being conveyed in a manner where, you used a very nice word, fluff, around the message to sort of create a cushion for people who want to hear it that way. And some people want to hear it in a very blunt way. I've had some leaders in the past who have been, I wouldn't bad communicators, but who have not been able to give out the message in a productive manner. Let's put it that way. But this is great. A great lesson,
It
and we
does.
get.
It's not always straightforward though, and I've made mistakes recently where I've tried to talk to my team in the right context, and they've picked up on one word I've used and then gone into panic because I've used one particular word, and it's like, no, you've misunderstood the message I'm trying to say here. I'm saying it's not going to cause that, but they've jumped on it and they've then reacted in the right way. So it's still not perfect, and I still beat myself up sometimes when the message has not landed in the way it should. But yeah, it's a constant challenge.
Yeah. All right, Simon. Now I want to talk about something that is really close to your heart, and you've been a huge advocate of that, and that's neurodiversity. In layman term, what is neurodiversity?
Oh, that's a big question.
I don't understand anything at all. How would you explain it to me?
So neurodiversity is actually a term that talks about everyone's brains being different. So neurodiversity is a general term for we're all neurodiverse. Everyone's brain thinks differently. Everyone's mind thinks differently. We all work in a different way in that respect. The key term is neurodivergence, which is when there's something that is different with someone's brain as far as there's enough difference to mean they've got a condition such as autism, ADHD, dyslexia, dyspraxia, Tourette's, and there's many others as well. And what's key is those people with neurodivergence need to be given the same allowances as everybody else.
Yes.
And ensuring that the workplace or schools or home life entitles everyone to get the same accessibility to everything. And it's the reason I'm passionate about it is there's neurodivergence in my family. I'm on a journey myself with understanding my own neurodivergence, potentially autism, although nothing officially diagnosed, but it's in my family, and I share the traits that others have got. And that's enabled me to start being a voice in the neurodiversity world, to try and push that message, particularly in the workplace. It's trying to unlock doors for people. It's trying to give people the same access to everything else. That could be from things like job specs, interview processes, onboarding, working environments. So it's trying to share enough knowledge that everyone's aware of things, but then also talking them through, coaching them through the environment they need to help set up to enable people to be successful. And that might be that job specs don't have 25 bullet points in them of things that must have for this role. It's identifying the 2 or 3 key things that are needed for a role, and then looking at the person and how they could fit the company and do those 3 key things. But actually, they might bring something different to the role. But by specifying 25 bullet points on a job spec, people with a neurodivergence might go, well, I only ticked 21 of those 25 bullet points, so I'm not going to apply for the job. And actually, they'd have been a brilliant fit for the role. So it's sometimes about making us as employers think differently about how we want this role to be filled. Do we want a carbon copy of the person that just left? Or do we want someone that's going to bring something different to the role? Therefore, let's make the job spec more inclusive. Let's make it more open and target the specifics that we want rather than the 25 must-haves that the person previously had. So it's thinking differently on that level. Then it's the interview process. Maybe you send the questions out beforehand to enable everyone to get that ability to think about the answers beforehand rather than being put on the spot and not knowing how to respond. There's still ways of being able to test that in the moment reaction. So maybe you ask them the first question and you follow up with something, and that enables you to quickly see how they respond to a question they weren't expecting. That's fine in small chunks, but for someone with a neurodivergence, sometimes an interview process where you've got question after question after question that's just no one's expecting is really difficult. And again, it's making the interview environment good for people. So it's things like maybe you don't have an interview in an office. Maybe you can sit outside. Maybe you can meet them somewhere they feel comfortable. and thinking about the conditions of the person you're talking to. At the end of the day, you want that person to feel comfortable and be able to show them their best selves. For someone with autism, maybe they don't feel comfortable giving you eye contact. So don't make them give you eye contact. I've had an interview where I've had someone sitting facing the other way. And while it feels awkward to start with, once you're in the moment, you accept that and you treat them as you would any other interviewee. So it's just enabling everyone to think differently and find ways to enable them to feel like they can succeed in what you're offering. But there's a long journey to go. Companies are only just starting to wake up to this need to be different and to look at things differently. Some companies have got it further on that journey than others. We've just started our employee networks, and we've got a disability employee network that I'm co-chair of. And the neurodiversity thing is part of that. We're raising the awareness of the different neurodivergent conditions. So we're talking about autism, we're talking about ADHD. We're having workshops with the wider employee base of this is how to support someone that might be in your team on neurodivergence. And just raising that awareness to try and improve it. But there is a long way to go. But I think the biggest thing is to have an open mind and to genuinely care about people being successful. Means they may have to have allowances that are different to other people's.
Yes. Yeah. So this is so important, and I think this is a very important message for everyone, not just testers, but everyone who listens to this. That it is important to have an open mind first of all. Okay, and be accommodative. And embrace people with that. With who are neurodivergent. So, do you have a set guideline for including neurodivergent people, or is it still evolving, or it sort of you accommodate changes to it based on any different person or something different that you observe in somebody?
I think it's not about having specific set guidelines, because I think the key thing with neurodivergence is every single person with a neurodivergent condition is different. Yeah. No two people with autism display in the same way. No two people with ADHD display in the same way. Everybody presents differently. Yeah. So having a strict guideline is going to be a struggle, but it's about enabling opportunity for the person that's in front of you. And if they have a condition, it's supporting that. I had an interview once where I was interviewing someone, and it was for a testing role. And the person very early on in the interview said, by the way, I have ADHD. And he was nervous that I was going to say, sorry, I'm not going to employ you. But I went, that's fine. If you're successful in this interview, we will work on how we accommodate you in the workplace. And he became one of my best ever exploratory testers, because he had the ability to multi-focus. He could hyper-focus on one thing, but he'd also do 2 or 3 things at the same time. And he'd have some how-to guide opened up while diving into log files over here by doing something else over here. And he'd be able to find defects that people are going, how in the world did you find that? And just that reaction within the team warmed to him very quickly. And they knew that they could give him something, he would find something that no one else will find. And that was a really positive feeling for him as well. And it was giving him the platform to use his superpowers effectively. And that's what it's got to be about. Not everyone likes talking about it in terms of superpowers, because with these neurodivergent conditions come challenges as well. But it's enabling people to be successful and use their strengths and not be put off by their weaknesses, their challenges, or whatever the term might be. And treating them as an equal. And sometimes you find out that people that are neurotypical have their own challenges, and they have things they can't do either. And it's working together as a team. And as long as you think about, as a leader, you think about your team as a whole, and that you've got all the parts covered. It doesn't matter that one person's not got all the skills needed, but another person might have the skill over here that can work together with them on certain things. So it's just looking at that picture differently.
Well, a huge thank you to you for sharing your thoughts about it, and a huge shout out to first of all EasyJet for for being open to the idea of being inclusive as far as neurodivergent people are concerned. I know that there are some companies who still need to open up. I know there has been a lot of conversation that's happening around this subject, but we still, as people, need to open up our minds and be more accepting. So a huge shout out for that. I think this was a bit of a serious conversation, so I want to get into something light, and what better than football So disappointed with the results at the Euro?
Was I disappointed? I was disappointed for my sons, my boys, who got to watch the final and got very upset when we lost. But I wasn't expecting much from the tournament, to be honest. We didn't start very well. We didn't play very well for the group stages, and we grew into the tournament. But I've watched England since I was a small boy. I remember the Italian 1990 World Cup where we got to the semi-finals and lost on penalties. I remember Euro 96 where we lost on penalties. I remember 98 where we lost on penalties. So it's very much part of my DNA now that I expect disappointment with the English national team. The men's national team. I've loved watching the women's team, the Lionesses, who won the Euros in 2022 and got to the semi-finals or the final of the World Cup as well. But the men have improved recently. Southgate did get them playing, but
yes.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting us to win. I loved that we got to the final. I loved that I was able to make a big deal of it with my boys, and we went somewhere different to watch it, and they got to feel the atmosphere of watching it as a collective. But yeah, it doesn't upset me as much as it would have done as I was a child. I think I'm past that now. I've seen enough failure both with the national team and my own team as well, Peterborough United. We're very low down on the footballing pyramid in the UK. We're third tier. We don't expect to win, so I'm used to that feeling of not being successful. So,
well, since I'm on the other side of the pond, we're quite disappointed with the results in semi-finals. A lot of different opinions about that game, about the penalty. It was quite interesting.
Yeah,
it was quite an interesting week after the semi-finals. I mean, and so but then overall, again, even the Netherlands didn't play that well throughout the tournament. We were lucky enough to go to the semi-finals, but beyond that, I mean, it's all again. So this is about football. So do you follow cricket as well?
Loosely. I followed it more closely probably 10 years ago. My late father-in-law was a big cricket fan. I went to one-day internationals with him. England, Australia, and England, South Africa, and a few others. So I've lost touch with it recently. I keep track of the results, but I'm not watching it as actively. I'm afraid.
Well, so because I come from India, and cricket is huge in India,
of course.
And with them winning the recent T20 World Cup, it's grown even bigger.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also good to see the women's team starting to do well, like you mentioned about the women's football team, England women's football team. The Indian cricket women's team is starting to do well, and we are hopeful about the Cricket World Cup, Women's World Cup that's going to happen in October. So let's see what they do. Are they able to emulate the men or not? So let's get back into testing and leadership and stuff like that. I know we've spoken about sport. The conversation was a little heavy with the whole neurodiversity thing because, I'll be honest, Simon. I've had friends who have been in that situation. At a point, I used to feel bad for them that they are being ignored. Then I've had my personal challenges as well, and having dealt with a lot of mental health issues myself, I recognize the value of being inclusive and being open towards people with such diversity. So it's very important. And thank you for sharing your thoughts. I hope that people get motivated listening to you. So coming back, what have been some of the biggest challenges that you've had when it comes to implementing certain processes? Is it stakeholder buy-in? Is it convincing the team, or is it the technical aspect? What have been some of the challenges?
I think my biggest challenges have been trying to sell the narrative around why we want to do things and the way we want to do them. And I know I speak for many in big organizations where people see testing as an activity that only happens towards the end of a cycle, and trying to change that mindset to being quality engineering is everywhere. We need to be at the start, we need to be at the end, we need to be in production, we need to be during every phase of the process, we need to be engaged. It's bringing people on that journey has been the biggest challenge for me. The last two companies I've worked for, EasyJet and the one before, were very waterfall based and were very testing only happens at the end. We've only got money to pay for testing at the end of a project cycle. And it's taken a lot of work to change that and to show the value. But the way to do it is to do the small POCs, to do the small iterations on the smaller projects, and say, look, trial it on this project. Let us be engaged from the start. Let us look at the testability. Let us look at the design. Let us look at how we craft the requirements. And we'll prove that there'll be 20% less testing at the end because we've done it all earlier on. And you do that on a smaller scale, and you have the right metrics to show it, and then you get that buy-in to try it on the bigger things, and then you build those allies, those advocates that people will step in and talk about it and shout about it for you because they've seen the success. It's finding ways to add value. We had a big push to get involved in our change management process. We have this CAB process where people review all the changes that are going into production. And I raised the question at one point of how do we know the testing's been done on all these changes that are going into production? Because these were patches, these were minor tweaks of different systems that were going live. And actually, when you dived into them, the documentation they presented as part of the change request didn't show anything about the testing they'd done. Had they thought about the bigger picture? Had they thought about the systems it impacts? And it was actually a way of building allies quite quickly. We started having a presence on the CAB calls. We started saying, well, can we just check? You're not just testing that change in isolation. You are looking at the systems downstream and upstream that this connects to. And they're like, oh no, we haven't done that. And then the rest of the CAB committee would go, right, that change needs to go back. We need to understand this. Simon, can you talk to that person? I've now got my team sitting on the CAB rather than myself, and we have a different representative each week. And they all challenge it. And now the main committee are challenging the changes as well. And it's changing that mindset. And that's been a big win for us because we've been able to really push the reasons why it's important that we're involved. And people are starting to see that value. And then people are starting to sit up and go, you know what, this QE function, they really can help if we get them engaged. And it's been building those allies has been the most powerful thing. And we'll continue to build those allies around the business. We'll end up with the picture we need within quality engineering, which is that holistic quality view.
So if I were to give a one-line summary of what you said,
use an AI tool for that.
Could I say back your arguments with data?
Yeah.
as
I think
as
that's
a
fair.
one-line summary.
Yeah.
Because more often than not, whether it is leadership or whether it is your team or whether it is a support function, I mean, if you present your arguments backed by substantial data, then they don't have the room to challenge it that much, and they are
Yeah, agreed.
to contribute and adapt to what is suggested. Yeah. Okay. So I know we are quite tight on time. So I have room for one last question. Uh,
Sure.
what is the one piece of advice that you would like to give to young testers in their journey that lies ahead of them?
Don't be pushed straight into automation. Learn how to test first. Think about the bigger picture of quality. Don't just think about, oh, I need to write code. If you generally want to go into testing, learn the fundamentals of how you test, how to identify different scenarios, think outside the box around, well, what happens if I do this? Look at exploratory testing. Read Explore It by Elizabeth Hendrickson. Find something that really energizes you thinking about testing. If you want to go into testing, learn testing first. Then look at how you can enhance your testing skills by looking at automation or looking at performance skills or looking at security skills. But get the fundamentals of testing right first. And too many people moving into our industry are jumping straight into test automation where they can write thousands of Selenium scripts or thousands of Cypress scripts or thousands of Playwright scripts without thinking about, how do I actually test? And if everyone did that first, I think the industry would feel stronger as far as our roles are being pushed out. I think if more people focused on that testing part, we would be in a stronger position as an industry.
But Simon, as you were saying that, I started thinking that a lot of times I have heard a lot of leaders say that we've hired these many people, but not all of them can actually test properly. They may automate, they may be coding champions and champions in automation, but when it comes to testing, they may be quite poor. But your response, your piece of advice may work in their favor as well. So it is not just an advice that you give for young testers, but it is an advice for experienced people as well, for leaders, for hiring managers as well, that focus on the basics, get the basics right. You could learn automation, you can teach automation later as well, but the fundamentals need to be clear. So thank you so much, Simon, for this wonderful conversation. I thoroughly enjoyed it. There are a lot of important lessons that we can learn from you. And folks, if you are watching this, make sure that you read Simon's blog. He's got a wonderful blog. I will put a link in the description. Listen to the Testing Peers podcast. Some very engaging conversations happening there. Every time I listen to one episode, I usually listen to a lot of podcasts. And of late, a lot of new podcasts have started. The Vernon Richard Show, brilliant one as well. Good Day has started one. That is also very nice. I was hearing the second episode. I think that got released a few days ago. I was listening to that and I found that very interesting, very practical, very how should I say? The candid nature of those conversations makes you feel that, oh, this has happened to me. You know what? This is my story being narrated by somebody else. So that is why these are important. And for my audience, please follow Simon and his other co-hosts as well, because those are some very insightful conversations. Thank you so much, Simon, for this conversation that we had. I am intrigued. I have a lot more questions, actually. But
maybe
yeah,
we need a part two then at some
yeah,
point in
yeah,
the
we
future.
definitely need a part two. And in fact, I have been thinking about a part two with a lot of other guests, because every time it happens that I start a conversation, and during the conversation my mind opens up and I'm like,
Yeah,
wow, this is a nugget. So I need to learn more about it. Oh, these are words of wisdom I need to. So a season two of or a new chapter, as I must call it, of TesterSpeak needs to start soon, where I need to start inviting all my previous guests. And you've just blown my mind with some of the things that you've said, and it has opened my mind to a lot of other questions as well. Thank you so much for your time today, Simon. I
no
know this
worries.
was
Really
our
enjoyed it.
first conversation online. This is the first time we are talking, and this is so insightful. I am really, really happy with this. I think
Good.
people will find this episode really useful. Um, and we'll keep talking. We'll keep talking on LinkedIn.
Absolutely. Yeah,
We'll
definitely.
keep bashing some of those posts as well. So yeah. So thank you so much, Simon.
Good. No, thank you.
Well, folks, that was a wrap on today's episode. Thank you so much for listening to us. Do follow Simon and others. Like I said, I will put all the links in the description. Share this. Put a like if you like the conversation. Also, subscribe to the channel. And stay tuned for more conversations like this. Until then, happy testing. Namaste.